In this episode of Becoming a Broker, we're going to be looking at the question, which is, what does a mortgage broker do? As a mortgage broker, what is it that their day-to-day role is? Because this is something that, if you're thinking about starting a career anyway in this line of work, then you absolutely need to know what it is and whether or not this is something for you. And so I want to unpack that for you. I've got some notes in front of me here that I'm going to go through with you on this podcast episode, on this video. And so we're going to be talking about what the actual mortgage broker does, the types of mortgage brokers that are out there, also what your day-to-day role would look like whilst being a mortgage broker, so you can decide whether or not this is something you want to pursue even further as a career choice. So let's dive into the first one, which is, what do they actually do? Well, effectively, they just source the mortgage market to find a suitable mortgage product for a client. So let's say someone wants to buy a house, that's the jargon term. Let's say someone wants to buy a house, they're going to find your mortgage, they're going to pick your mortgage that's suitable for you. That's it. Within reason. There's lots of other things they can do, and there's a range of services and types of services that they offer, but fundamentally you are brokering and advising between a client and a bank, building society, lender, whatever it may be, whoever is going to lend the money, a lender. You're just going to broker between the two of them, and you're going to advise the client on what they should do and then broker between that. So that's pretty much what the job is. Now, there are different types of mortgage brokers out there. There are what is referred to as tied, multi-tied, and also, is it representative of whole of market? I'm trying to make sure I get the words right. It's no longer whole of market, but it's what they call representative of whole of market. So let's unpack what they are. So the first one we said is tied. So a tied advisor, a tied mortgage broker or advisor, they are effectively tied to one provider, or usually one provider overarching. So let's say this would normally be in banks or in building societies. Now, you could have something like a Lloyds Banking Group, for example. They might advise within the Lloyds Banking Group, but they're still the banking group. So they would be classed as tied. And that means that, like I said, they can only give advice on one area. You then have what is known as multi-tied. So multi-tied is when they can give advice on a panel or a range of lenders. And a panel is what you'll normally hear people say. This is very common in large corporate companies. So Connells is, as of right now and historically always been, a panel. So they deal with a panel of like 12 to 15 lenders. It could be 18. It always chops and changes. And that means that they have chosen to work with a range of lenders, but not everybody. So they're better than, or that they have more access, not so much better, but they have more access than a tied provider, but they have less access than the final one. Now, what you'll normally find, by the way, is that people will say when they go to multi-tied, why would someone be multi-tied? So it makes sense why someone would be tied, because it's their products they're selling. But why would someone be multi-tied? You'll normally hear people say, we get exclusive deals, we get exclusive rates, and blah, blah, blah. To be honest with you, none of that's not true. It is technically true, but it's not really what you would think. The real reason, and many of the corporates won't like me saying this, but I'm not here to do this for the corporates. I'm here to do it for the brokers who are trying to navigate this space and get into this space. It's that they will get more favorable income. So by being tied to certain providers, they may get a higher proculation fee, which is how brokers get paid, which is what I will absolutely be breaking down throughout these, of how do brokers get paid and what does that look like. But this right now, that's normally what it would be. Normally, when they're multi-tied, it's because they're getting a higher income. Then what you have is what is known as representative of whole of market. Now, it's no longer whole of market. It used to be whole of market, but we don't call it that anymore. And the reason why it can't be called whole of market is because technically there are providers out there who will not go through brokers. They are tied direct to consumer only. And so because of that, you're technically not whole of market. You are representative of whole of market. And so that does open you up to a few things they do. You have to be, the wording is very important. Now, if you're going through your CMAPs, or you've done your CMAPs, or you're considering this as a career, you'll realize that within regulation, you will find that we have to be really specific about the words we use and what we say. And so this is one of those things. But effectively, it means that if it is available through a broker, through an intermediary, so through somebody like a mortgage advisor or broker, then effectively they will do that. They will offer that. And so that's representative whole of market. Now, a whole of market we'll just call it whole of market in this, just for argument's sake, realistically the best service, best offer of service you can have. Now, by the way, this also applies to insurance, because you will also be selling as a mortgage broker. Your job most of the time is going to be to sell insurance as well. So to sell life insurance, income protection, critical illness, anything that's going to be a potential problem if someone is unable to pay the mortgage, then this can cover that problem. That's going to be aligned with that. And that's one thing a mortgage broker does as well. And they're the same with this. You have a tied, multi-tied, whole of market. It's the same thing. What you will find though as well with many mortgage brokers is they might be whole of market as a mortgage, but then they might be multi-tied, so panelled for insurance. That is more common. You might actually find as well that they might be multi-tied. So someone like Connells, when I worked there, can't speak to what they're like now, but when I worked there, we were multi-tied for our mortgages and we were tied to Aviva only for our insurance. This is something to consider there. Now, why would people tie or multi-tie? Again, it comes back to commissions. You get more money usually if you tie and get an exclusive deal with them. That's the type of thing that normally goes ahead. Again, I can't speak to what goes on in there. It's just normally the case. So that's another thing they do. Now, before I go into what a mortgage broker does in their day-to-day role, I do want to talk a little bit about this idea of the difference between a mortgage broker versus a mortgage advisor, because I think this is something that people do talk about and want to know, because I've used it interchangeably and I'm aware that if you're watching this, there is no difference between a mortgage broker, a mortgage advisor with an E, advisor with an O. There's no real difference. Mortgage consultant is what is sometimes, MSc is what we referred to when I worked at Connells, which is mortgage service consultant. They're all the same thing. They all do the same job. They effectively do this. Now, the best way, a mentor who mentored me that said, what exactly does a mortgage broker do? The best way to summarize it, he said, was, we make sure that you don't waste time and money on products or lenders who would appear attractive at first glance, but ultimately don't accept you due to strict underwriting criteria. That is literally what a mortgage broker does in a nutshell. And a mentor of mine who's been a mentor for many years, he told me that a long time ago and it stuck. So that summarizes what a mortgage broker does. Now, what does your day-to-day look like as a broker? That's the other thing I wanted to cover. A day-to-day for most mortgage brokers is going to look pretty hectic, to be completely fair. It's going to have a lot of meetings. You're going to have a lot of phone calls, a lot of face-to-face appointments, potentially, maybe Zoom calls, being with clients a lot. You're going to have to speak to them a lot, see them a lot, go through their situations, really have good personal skills and good interpersonal skills and being able to talk to people. So if you're someone who's a little bit shy or a bit nervous, either you want to learn to get better skills on that or you want to accept that's just the way it's going to be. But that's very much the case. So you're going to see a lot of people. Outside of meetings and lots of meetings, that's going to be with lenders, with all those things. You're also going to have a lot of research time. So you're going to have to be researching what goes on and what lenders suit what client and what criteria changes have happened. A lot of that is going to happen as well. So a ton of research. Then on top of that, you're also going to have a lot of networking. So you want to try and meet new people, meet people locally, especially if you're self-employed. You want to be networking as much as you possibly can. And so there's going to be that as well. And then the big one that many mortgage brokers hate, to be honest, I was thinking, how do I say that in a better way, is admin. So it's a big chunk of your time is going to be made up of admin and making sure that stuff is, your admin and your cases are compliant. It is a regulated environment, and a lot of times commissions and payments can get halted if you haven't got your admin all sorted. So admin is a huge thing that is part of your job. As mortgage brokers, if you're self-employed, get better, they often do employed administrator to deal with a lot of those tasks and a lot of employed roles. If you are somebody who is proven to be good, they will normally employ you an administrator in as well, depending on the role. So it really still is, like I said, it comes down to the place, but that's what a day-to-day mortgage broker kind of life is going to look like, is lots of calls and meetings, lots of research, lots of networking where possible, lots of administration tasks. Going to be long days, and it's going to have a massive learning curve. If you're jumping into the industry, it's like jumping right into the deep end and really panicking for a while. So you've got to know that if this is the type of career you want to go down, that you know that it's going to be hard. It's going to get much harder before it gets easier. But once it gets easier, it's an incredibly rewarding and incredibly satisfying and an incredibly financially beneficial career. You can do very well being a mortgage broker if you are willing to put in the time and work and get through that. So that is what a mortgage broker does. That is how it works. As I've said before, this is the Becoming a Broker podcast and series. So please do subscribe to the podcast if you want to hear more about this. And if you have any questions for me, you can leave them in the comments here, or if you want to ask me a direct message, you can head over to Instagram, that is @ashborland. Just drop me a message over there and you can drop me a DM. I do answer them and I'm pretty active on there as well. Next episode of the show. Cheers.